In this episode, I give you a simple technique that you can use in many different situations to improve what's going on between you and your horse. So here we go, episode 233, clear it or clarify it. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well. I am sitting here and it is really feeling full-on summer here these days. Big surprise. Not really. It's July in Florida. But yeah, every year it's like inevitable. We get to this point where it's just wet and rainy and then blazing sunny. Anyway, and we're full into all the lovely issues that come with that here in Florida. It's a little bacteria breeding ground. Actually, I've been pretty good on that front. But my horses, all the ones with white socks or pasterns, they live with Desitin smeared all over the back of their pasterns so they don't get scratches from the grass. I think the local pharmacy must think that I'm like running the worst daycare center ever because I just go in and pick up Desitin by like the case. It's sort of my cure-all for everything. It works great to prevent scratches, to help scratches heal. For some of the horses who have the allergies to the no-see-ums, I'll just put that like in their tails. It's really gross, but put it in their tails or their manes or their ears, and it just coats it and creates this barrier. It's zinc, so it's, zinc oxide. So it's good. It's good for wound care and stuff. But anyway, so there's that. And, we live here in lovely Ocala, which is rolling green fields, and the grass is so perfect. And then 4 out of my 7 horses need to be on the dirt track right now, between protecting their feet from the sugars, or I have one that gets a grass allergy, so he starts getting heaves. That's hot shot. We kept trying to keep him off the dust, and then realized a couple of years ago that it was the grass causing the allergy. So we put him on the dirt track, and then he does much, much better. Yeah, so I'm checking everybody's digital pulses every day and monitoring. I've got Atomic with some chronic tendon issues, and boy, I sound like I'm complaining. I don't really mean to be. I'm not complaining. It just is what it is. But I know it can be super frustrating for anybody who's dealing with stuff like this. And, you're not alone. Just no matter how well you manage them, no matter how good care you take, there's always something else to be taken care of, always something else to be managed. And that's just, horses. So, yeah. So, like I said, it can be frustrating, but you just handle what's in front of you. And I have to admit, though, part of me really does love this time of year. I think because it makes me do and think differently. You just have to. You have to change your pattern. And I really believe that it's such a valuable practice to change patterns. Not just randomly or haphazardly, but, in the change the seasonal pattern. We humans are so good at finding the efficiency that we can get into a pattern which can help us and be a positive. But then, anything you do too long, it can create a rut. And then it makes it harder to be nimble or adaptable. And I think everybody can kind of go brain dead. It's like, oh, we just do the same thing. We don't even have to think about it anymore. So I really do love changing things up. And in this kind of weather, you've got to, modify. And some of you on the southern hemisphere right now might be doing these same kind of modifications because it's winter, or anybody else in the northern hemisphere, like you're doing this at a different time of the year. And I just invite you to welcome it It's a time where I spend more undemanding time with my horses, doing spa days or just all the horse health stuff. It's such a great time to bond and, do things that help their body. I really do believe they understand when you're trying to take care of them. Although Atomic still will walk away as soon he can hear a jar of ointment, the lid being unscrewed from like a mile away. He's like, "Oh, you're going to put some goo on me." Anyway, I can teach them new tricks. And as I often say, you focus on what you can do. So I've done much more hacking around the property, doing more bareback and bridleless because it's a great time of year to do that. Everybody's just really chill and can kind of cruise around on the trails in the shade. And it's also a great time of year to do, focus on the walk. The walk is such a powerful gait. And I do focus on the walk just as part of my normal training, but I do it more in the summer. There's so many different kinds of walks, and it's such a valuable gait to master. And it's probably the hardest gait to master. So yeah. Anyway, so that's what I've been doing. Just a lot of that sort of stuff. But that's not what I wanted to make this podcast about. This podcast is about a little technique that I use that really helps me try to figure out what's going on. And, when a challenge comes up or if there's something that's not working with my horses. So the question I ask myself is, do I need to clear it or clarify it? Being a master of something doesn't mean you have all the answers, but it means you know what questions to ask. So in any one moment, if there's resistance or brace or something not working between you and your horse, ask your horse, how can I help? And then ask yourself the question, what does my horse need? And often the answers relate to one of two categories, things that need to be cleared or things that need to be clarified. So stress, anxiety, fear, that needs to be cleared. Misunderstandings need to be clarified. And identifying or taking your best guess about which of these your horse needs is going to bring you closer to the solution faster. These two things are usually woven together, right? Confusion can create stress and vice versa. But often there's one that's the root cause, and that's what you want to practice finding. So next time something's not working, ask yourself, do I need to clear it or clarify it? When I think about clearing something, I'm thinking about dissolving the brace, finding the reason for the brace or the defensiveness, and then trying to remove the reason for it. So it's not just about trying to get yours to give, right? Give me your neck or soften, ask for those flexions or something. Because if there's an emotional reason behind the brace, trying to manipulate the body or the neck to let go of that is actually going to be scarier. Now, there's always ways to dovetail and ask for yield in a way that it causes a horse to relax, and then they feel relaxed, and then nothing bad happens, and then they get there. So I get that. This is, trying to simplify very complex things in very complex bodies. But I find it helpful to try to at least break things down as a starting point. And so if you're thinking of a problem and you're thinking, well, there's brace, there's tension, there's negative emotions, if we want to say it that way, anything in the stress or defensiveness category, if you think that that's in there, then you want to clear that first. So maybe an example is a horse is feeling quote unquote stiff to the left in the arena, but they're scared of the arena and they're spooking a bit or something like that. You might want to say, well, this feels like something that needs to be cleared. Then let's try to have him feel more confident or not afraid before we just jump in and try to treat it like it's a mental misunderstanding or physically manipulate it. And so this also doesn't mean to avoid, right? So it doesn't mean, oh, I'm not going to deal with anything, I'm just going to go wait. It just means maybe you have to deal with things at a lower threshold and find a way for your horse to realize that he's safe, right? So it doesn't mean, well, he's scared in the arena, let's not go in the arena. It might for that day, but it just means to be aware of what's happening and aware that whatever you're doing, you're going to need to do it with the purpose of clearing it, right? So I don't mean that you don't touch your horse's body in any way or ask him to do things in those moments that he's afraid, but you're doing them for the purpose of clearing the tension, clearing the fear, dissolving his reason for feeling like he needs to defend himself. So it's really important to know if there's any kind of that dynamic going on as a root cause. So the other category is to clarify it, right? And so that one's sort of more simple in a way. If you think, oh, well, there's something that needs to be clarified. Clearly he's not understanding what I'm asking for. Like I'm putting an aid on and it's not working for some reason. There's confusion, there's misunderstanding. I'm doing this and he's giving me that, and that's not what I meant. So you want to think about, what does my horse need to understand? How can I explain it to him better? How can I educate him? What would be a simpler way to do this, or a different circumstance, or a different spot in the arena to try to do it so he can be more successful, right? So we want to make sure that the horse knows exactly what we're asking them to do. And anybody who does horses, you guys know it's confusing, right? So if they're confused, they can become tense, and it seems like maybe it's a fear issue, but the reason that they're afraid is because they're confused. And if you're asking them to do something and they're confused about it, and then they become afraid, and you just deal with the fear, then they'll be like, oh, phew, that's over with. And they might get more calm, but they haven't understood anything, and it's going to repeat. And that's one of the ways you're sort of barking up the wrong tree or going down the wrong trail, or whatever metaphor you would like, insert metaphor there, is because it keeps happening. Or if it gets worse, right? Because now they're really nervous because it's not resolving. So they can become emotional because they're confused. They can also become confused because they're emotional. I think we can all relate to that. There's stuff that we know, but if we're nervous, it's like we can't even think about it anymore. Like I can't do math in front of people. Like I'm not bad at math. I have my way of doing it. But if I'm just standing there talking to someone and I have to do arithmetic in my head, I can't even add 1 and 1. Right? So that same thing can happen with horses, and they're emotional, and so they become confused. But if you just treat it as something that needs to be clarified, now you're using aids, and you're like, come on, you know this, and you're reteaching something that the horse already knows, and the only reason that they aren't able to do it is because they're stressed, and you actually need to clear it. So I guess let me think of an example. Here's a simple example on the ground. So you have a horse in a grooming stall, and let's say you would like him to stand quietly in the grooming stall, tied or not tied, but let's just say not tied, because that makes it much more obvious whether they are standing quietly and still in the wash stall or the grooming stall. And so you have the horse in there, and you go to put the brush away or go get something out of the tack room, and the horse leaves the grooming stall. Okay. And let's say you put him back in, and then that happens again and again. And now it's a problem, right? So you have a problem. Do we need to clarify? Do we need to clear something or clarify something? Well, it depends. What's going on? How is he leaving? So do you have a horse that's nervous and he's sort of standing there, with his body in a tense posture, whether he's dancing around or just sort of frozen there, and as soon as he gets the opportunity, he's out of there. So maybe he's standing there because he is cross-tied, or because you're holding him, It could be even lightly. Some horses are very respectfully freaking out, right? They're just a little fidgety or they're a little frozen, but you turn your back on them and they're like, doo, I'm out of here. They're clearing they're clearing the situation for themselves. So that horse would be very different than a horse who's standing there totally calm. You go to, put something back in the tack room or turn your back on to put the brush away or find the hoof pick or something. And he's like, oh, look over there. I think I'll go chew on that thing. Right. So it could be just a horse who's like, oh, she's not here anymore. Guess we're done here, and walks off. And that horse just didn't know better. Right. So you could look at that horse and go, oh, he doesn't understand that he's supposed to stay there by himself, even if I turn my back. And so if your horse is, the general rule, I think, is if the horse is showing any kind of anxiety or the feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm not okay here, so I need to leave, like clearing that comes first, except for basic boundaries to keep everybody safe. As soon as you know you're safe and no one's going to run over anybody, that the most important thing is that they're okay in the situation. So always err on the side of clearing something first as much as you can. So the horse that's tense there, you've got, okay, we need to be okay in this space. Do you need to turn around? Do you need to sniff stuff? What's going on? Do we need to be able to talk about things that could cause relaxation? The main purpose is I need to clear that, because if he wasn't wishing he was out of there because he's not comfortable there, then we wouldn't have this tension. The other horse who's just like standing there nicely, but you turn your back and he's thinking, oh, guess we're done. And he just walks off because there's something interesting to sniff over there. That horse is like, sure, I'll stand here, I'll stand there. I just didn't know I was supposed to. And so then you need to have a training session. You need to clarify and need to take time out of your grooming routine to go, oh, wait, he doesn't understand that he's supposed to stand there for X amount of time, which we have to slowly develop. So we have success doing that. And what are the techniques I'm going to use for that? We have boundaries. We could put a pole on the ground to make it a clearer, threshold. I can use positive reinforcement. I can give him scratches. How am I going to help him understand what to do and help him feel good that he was successful and know when he was successful? So that's definitely like a clarifying, like some education. And again, if you have a horse who's not understanding, and so he's like, I'm going to walk off, and then he gets punished or he gets back, and he doesn't understand why you're mad, that horse could become emotional now, and now not want to be into that grooming stall simply because he doesn't understand what's happening. He doesn't understand why sometimes you're leaving him alone and sometimes you're upset with him. Yeah. So I think this simple question can be so helpful. Let's see, an example, riding. Let's say you have a horse, you're out going to do some dressage work or something like that, and the horse comes out, maybe it's a horse you don't know, and he comes out and he's really got his head up high. It's like it's stuck way up there. His neck is stiff. And it's just sort of blocked. He feels hard in the mouth, and he's kind of putting that under neck out and kind of chesting through your aids. Okay, so it's a good time to ask a question like, do I need to clarify it or do I need to clear it? Like, what is going on here? So a horse who's like that and running off or trying to scrape you against the wall or kind of ducks for the gate more, or just starts to speed up more and more and more as you go, like that horse might have things that need to be cleared. There's tension, there's fear. It could be fear of the arena, could be fear because there's separation anxiety with some, his herd mates. It could be fear from pain from the bit or the saddle. It could be anticipation of bad riding. Like maybe, again, we don't know the horse. Maybe he's been jerked in the mouth. Maybe his mouth is just really sensitive by nature. Maybe that bit doesn't fit him properly. Like there might be something in there that needs to be cleared. Maybe we need to just hang out in the arena. Maybe we need to do some more ground stuff. So there might be, the solution of how you're going to clear it is, a life's work with horses. But the important thing again is that the purpose of anything you do is to end that ride with that cleared, or moving closer to being cleared, or you feel like you made a significant drop of progress in the there, now he's relaxing and clearing some of that defensiveness and some of that fear, so that next time you're starting out from a better place. Or same horse, but it's just something that needs to be clarified. Like maybe he hasn't been educated. That's just his, I'll say, natural posture. Maybe that's just some breeding, right? Maybe he has a little saddlebred in there, or a Friesian, or, the type of horse that might put their heads like that anyway. Maybe he just never was ridden in balance and he's just like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. He just simply hasn't been educated. And so that horse, you might be able to start making some suggestions and giving his body some different possibilities and places to go. But if you did that with the first horse, he might get more nervous. What if he's nervous about contact in his mouth? So he's got his whole front end braced against that. And then you start manipulating his mouth. He's like, I knew it. But if you assume that postural habit is just from fear, when it's just a nice little happy camper horse who just happens to move that way, and maybe he just thought that's how he's supposed to move because of how somebody else rode him and he doesn't care, it's just the way he's doing it, and you start to give him some suggestions, he goes, oh, I had no idea. That kind of feels good. And so if we avoid that, we don't touch him, simply because his posture is a head high, which is the posture of a horse that looks nervous, but he's actually not, then you're going to miss an opportunity also. And I think postures like that, it's a posture of tension. It's going to be tense, or at least not as relaxed as it would be if it was in a posture of relaxation. So again, they're all interwoven. And I think in reality, we're always addressing both issues at the same time. We touch their body, but in a way, hopefully to clarify things. Or to clear things. We clear things so that we can end up talking to them. And so ideally, we're actually thinking about this all the time proactively. So harmonious education means that we're constantly monitoring our horse's mental and emotional states at the same time that we're measuring the performance of their physical bodies and their physical success of what they're doing. And moment by moment, we're clearing and clarifying as we teach, as we refine, as we push the limits, and as we remember that everything comes from and returns to relaxation. Anyway, short little episode for you today, but hopefully you can just listen to this and then go out and play with it. Next time you're out with your horse and something's coming up, see if you can remember just to go, I wonder if this is something that needs to be cleared or clarified. Anyway, I hope it helps. See you next time.